Hi, I'm Kelly at Book and Paper Arts, and today I have a video tutorial showing how to use soft pastels as a mixed media art supply. Pastels have been around since the 1400s, but normally they are used for painting or sketching. Today, though, I want to focus on using them in mixed media for your journal work, your collage, and other projects. I'm going to look at using pastels with stencils, with mark making, with a faux jelly plate technique that will knock your socks off. And yes, we're going to look at a little bit of drawing and painting, but only some abstract, not scary kind. I'm going to show you how to do these techniques and more, and then pull them all together to make an art journal layout using a lot of those techniques so you can see how they work in action. If you like journal arts, please be sure and subscribe to my YouTube channel and turn on the notifications, and you will have more of them in your life. Now let's go play with pastels. Recently, a company called Arrtx, that is Arrtx, wrote me and asked if they could send me this box of pastels to use in my videos. And since soft pastels are one of my favorite art supplies, I said, yes, you may. And I have been trying these for about a week now. I really like them. And I have a link to them in the text below this video, so if you like them, you can check that out. These were a gift, but just so you know, I'm not making money on any sales of the pastels. I do like these pastels. If you've seen my work, you know that I love dusty graphite colors, which they have a lot of here. They've got the slate blue, the slate green, this sort of plum. Here's a different slate blue. You can't have enough of those for me. But it also has a lot of happy colors, bright, jolly ones. And you can see that there is a lot of pigment to binder ratio here. One of the reasons that pastels are one of my favorite art supplies is that they are surprisingly versatile. You can just use them as pure color, as an alternative to a paint or an ink. You can also smudge them. And I love smudging so much. It pushes the color into the paper, makes it messy and mysterious, and adds some depth. Now, I like to use my finger, but you can also use a blending stick. And this is one that I got with a charcoal set. So if you're not sure where they are in your craft or art supply store, you could check out the tools near the charcoal pencils and whatnot. I have seen a few videos that say that you can use a cotton bud, like a Q-tip, as a blender. And it doesn't not work, but I find that it's pulling up more color than it's blending in. But that's just me and the effect that I like, so try it and see what you think. Soft pastels are also water soluble, which means that when you activate them with liquid, they turn into a kind of a paint or an ink, and you can move them around. Now, these vary depending on how much pigment is actually in your soft pastel. There's a lot in these, so it is turning very much into a kind of a paint. It does set very quickly, but it does allow you to move the color around. And I really like that. can also activate with a gel medium or gesso. And gesso is one of my go-to tools when working with soft pastels, because now I'm pulling the color out with the gesso, which has a heavy chalk content, and the color is now working with that chalkiness to produce a kind of a, to me, almost like a peeling fresco or peeling wallpaper look. It's soft and, again, very mysterious. And you can do a lot with that. Now let's look at stencils with the soft pastels. The first technique is going to be a dry on dry technique. That is dry pastel on dry paper. I am using a medium weight paper. It's about 90 pounds or 170 GSM, but just experiment with what you've got and what works best in your projects. You need a layer of color, a nice thick layer of color. You can see there's a little bit of some dust left over there, and I am going to just knock that off and save it for another technique I'm going to show in a few minutes. You need a stencil, and I'm going to use a makeup sponge. Now, a few minutes ago, I said that I was not crazy about using a makeup sponge for blending because it pulled up more color than it pushed in. See? In this technique, that is a good thing, because what we're doing is picking up the color from every place in the stencil that is exposed, making a resist with the pieces that are covered. And now it almost looks like a fabric or a tapestry. You could use this as a background, or you could cut it up and use it for fodder and embellishing, other collage work. You could use it for tags. It is just so pretty and so dramatic. Now, at this point, I'm going to shake off some extra dust. If I was going to use this as a background, I would not fix it yet. But it is going to move a little, so if you feel strongly about it, you can fix it with just a plain old spray fixative. And I'll talk more about these later. But personally, when I'm in the middle of a project using it as a background, I don't fix it yet. I just let it smudge if it wants to and keep going. This stencil technique uses wet paper with the dry pastel, dry on wet. I've shown this in videos several times before because it's one of my favorite go-to techniques for mark making. You want to get your paper wet. Not really wet, just damp. I'm using a mister with water. If you don't have one, you could also just brush on some water. But again, you want damp, not really, really wet. Now, take your pastel and color over your stencil. Now you can see there's a lot of space there. It didn't really want to go in. So I'm going to take this, my finger, and really work that in. And when I lift it up, the resolution is a little bit messy because of the wetness, but I like that. It's a little bit messy, a little bit distressy. And then it also, that chalk, when you use your finger to work it in there, it's really building up a layer. So there's actually some texture there from the chalk. Here's a different pastel. This one is Tim Holtz. Let's see, purple. I'm just going to color over some of these and work that in. And I'm just going to pull that out a little. I don't want it to be all matchy-matchy. I want it to be asymmetrical and fun since it's mark making. And again, you can see that there is some texture, a little messiness, and that's what mark making is all about. Here is another mark making idea. Bubble wrap. I am taking my bubble wrap and I'm going to use my spritzer and just get it wet on top of the bubbles. Now I'm going to take my dry pastel and rub it over that wet surface. You get a lot of color on there. Now, turn it over. And you've got really fun, luscious, messy honeycomb pattern there. Now let's look at a mark making technique called dusting. And remember when I said that I was saving up some of my shavings? You want to just put those down on your paper and then cover it with some, this is parchment paper, but you could use grease-proof paper or wax paper, deli paper. Now you want to fix those shavings into the page. I'm using a wooden stick, but you could use, I don't know, a card or just something to roll over it like that. Just get it fixed in there. And now, look at that. You've got just sprinkles everywhere. If you haven't saved up a little bit of shavings, why don't you just take your pastel, and I'm going to use this. You can use any kind of scrapey thing, a wooden spoon. Let's see. Ooh, purple looks nice with yellow. So there's the purple and the yellow. Let's just do that again. And again, you can use this for embellishing, for filling up space on your art journal page. Look good with tags, card making. And there you go. It's almost like you've made a little galaxy here. Could not be more fun. I also like how it looks when I use a wet paper. So again, I'm going to dampen my page with a spritzer, shake out some of the dust onto the wet page, fix it, and now you've got drama and texture. So play with both of those techniques. The next technique is what I call making a faux jelly print. I do not have a jelly plate. It's not exactly my style, although some of the results are gorgeous. And they're kind of pricey, so it wasn't something that I wanted to invest in since I wouldn't use it a lot. But when a friend told me that you could make faux jelly prints using styrofoam, I was all ears. Now, styrofoam is really bad for the planet. I have no idea why it is still around. but it is. It shows up all the time in packing materials and in the occasional grocery store pizza box. So if we're gonna be stuck with styrofoam, why not turn it into fun, free art supplies? You take your styrofoam and your pastel, and you can make shapes and different patterns, but I'm just going to show you how it looks if you just go with plain old. Make a nice thick coating there, and again, the spritzer. And you want to get these colors very, very wet. And now, take your paper, and put it down on the colors. Again, you could use a brayer. I have a brayer, but it makes a ton of noise on camera, even more than this card. So use what you got. And now I have pulled this super fun print. You can load up your color again while it's still wet. You can also try alternatively using wet paper on the dry pastel. Let's see, where's the green? Where's the green? There we go. And there you go. A lot of drama. Try different patterns and shapes. This is what it looks like when it's dry. So again, this could be a background, or you could cut it up and use it as fodder and embellishment. This is a print that I pulled without adding any extra color. This was like the second print that I pulled. The first one with a lot of color, and then the second one, it has less color, but I like the patterns. Again, that fading fresco look as the chalk and the pigment settle into the paper. Once you have finished, if you want to, you can take your styrofoam and just rinse it gently with some warm soapy water, and most of the color is going to come out. What doesn't, as in a proper jelly, is just going to add to the effect. Another thing that I really like about soft pastels is that when it comes to drawing and painting, they are very forgiving. I'm not great at drawing and painting, but I draw and paint anyway. And one of my strategies is to use techniques that are forgiving. That is, they are already super messy and distressy. So if my drawings are cartoonish or childlike or simple, that's just leaning into that messy, distressy technique, which is what pastels let you do. I'm going to use that water-soluble element here, and I have a lot of water on my brush, and that is letting me pick that color up and move it around. It's also moving itself around, again, very messy, very distressy. Working out into the page with shadows. And I want that. I want this to all bleed together. So now I have the start of something that I can play with and turn into something else because of that water-soluble and forgiving aspect of the soft pastel. Now to make an art journal layout using some of these techniques. I've put down some old text here, and then I made a contrasting border with some handwritten text. Now, if you don't have something handwritten, you could make a contrasting border with text that has a different size or style of font, sheet music, maps, whatever you have. I thought about making this kind of a cloud or a halo out of the faux jelly print. And I was going to have this guy either sailing into it or out of it. But I think this page is already going to be very, very busy. So I'm not going to use this time. But I wanted to show you that you could, do something like that. Instead, I'm going to start off now with, I've taken a sky blue pastel and I've gone all around the border of this border. Now I'm taking some gesso on a flat brush and I am going to pull some of that color out onto the page. For, again, a little bit of that plastery, fresco, messy look. Now I'm going to add some stencil work that resist dry on dry technique. And I'm going to start up here in the corner and do a very rough diagonal imperfect arch stencil work that goes all the way across to here. I have lightly penciled that in so that I can kind of see where I want that to go. And by pulling the stencil work across both pages, it's going to help this layout hold together so that you're going to see one canvas, not just page. I've added my blue color, and now I'm going to start lifting some of it up. And I'm just going to line my stencil up with the arches that are already there and just keep working into this all the way across until I've covered the blue. The layers are building up. I've got the pastel pulled with gesso here and then the resist stencil work on top of that. I glued down the kingfishers. Now I'm going to come to this side of the layout and add a sort of an abstract portrait using that forgiving painting method with the soft pastels. I have used a pencil to kind of sketch in just where I want the eyes to go and whatnot. Now I've added some branches that are orange. Not because branches are orange, but because I wanted to pick up some of the orange in the kingfisher's plumage. And I'm activating that with some water. And then I've got these little blooms. And I'm just going to smudge those into life a little bit. Looking a little tiny bit like maybe willow blooms. It doesn't matter, they're just meant to be whimsical. And add some detail. And now I'm going to get my brush wet again and pick up a little bit of a pinky color here from the pastel itself. And add a little bit of there we go. I like it. Finally, I'm going to add a little bit of mark making with the dusting. So I'm just going to very lightly mist the paper so that it's going to hold it a little bit better. But not too much or else I'll start activating the color. And now I'm just going to a little bit of that orange again to pick up the plumage. And fix it into place. And there we go. If you have any questions or feedback about using soft pastels as a mixed media art supply, please share those with everybody in the comments below this video. Also below this video, you'll find a text box that will have a link to the Arrtx pastels. And it will also let you know what's going on here at Book and Paper Arts, including information about my online art classes and vintage paper ephemera. Please join me next week when I will have a What's New in the Studio video, the Italian version. Until then, happy making.